I call the meeting to order of Blind River Town Council regular meeting. Good afternoon, good evening, councillors, staff, presenters, television viewers, and online viewers in Blind River. I would like to acknowledge that we are in Mississauga First Nation land. Prior to beginning this evening's agenda, I would ask that each councillor who is present via this Zoom video conferencing to answer the roll call when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Summers.
Present.
Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar.
Present.
Councillor Jim Dunbar.
I am present.
Councillor Stephen Wells.
Present.
Councillor H.P. Roy.
Councillor present, thank you.
And Councillor Jennifer Posterero.
Present.
Thank you. Next Wednesday, November 11th, the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 189, will be recognizing those who served in the past, as well as those who continue to serve our country in order to preserve Canada as a peaceful nation. There will not be a parade or services inside at the Legion in keeping with the COVID-19 guidelines. The wreaths will be placed at the cenotaph prior to a brief ceremony. Those attending the ceremony are asked to stay 2 meters apart and to wear a mask. There will be 1 minute of silence and the singing of O Canada and God Save the Queen. Please buy and wear a poppy as a sign of remembrance and a sign of respect. Timber Village Museum, which is located at the Blind River Marina, is recognizing 75 years since the end of World War II. There is an exhibition showing from November 5th to 30th, and the museum is open weekdays from 9 till 4 and Saturdays from 9 to 4. It's a chance to view history and to remember our brave Canadians. Now, without further ado, turning to tonight's agenda, I have a motion from Councillor Posterero, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved that Council approve the agenda, the closed agenda, and the addendum to the closed agenda as presented. All in favor of this motion? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And I have a motion from Councillor J. Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Summers. Be it resolved that Council adopt the minutes of the regular Council meeting of October 19th, 2020 as presented. All in favor of this motion? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Posterero?
I will be declaring a conflict of interest for Article 16 and Article 19, the closed session.
And we'd ask that you leave the room, and you will be texted when those topics are completed. Thank you for that. Anything else? Seeing none, we will move on. Was there any business arising out of the previous minutes from our previous council meeting? And seeing none, we do have a public presentation tonight from the Ontario Water Power Association. And I thank you, Stephanie Landers, for coming to join us tonight. And the floor is yours. Please take it over.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and councillors. And it's a pleasure to be here this evening, be it virtual. I was told by Pam I can share my screen, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. If I can find the correct thing to share here. Just one moment. I'm hoping everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So again, my name is Stephanie Landers. I'm with the Ontario Water Power Association, and I'm the Manager of Community Relations and Public Outreach. We are a member-based non-for-profit advocacy group located in Peterborough, Ontario, but we represent members all across Ontario, approximately 130 members, to be exact, who are either generators or product service providers, or those doing project management or environmental assessments on hydroelectric facilities. So the reason why I'm here today is I've been going around Ontario face-to-face before the pandemic and over virtual delegations during the pandemic to request that communities, specifically municipalities, consider becoming water power champions. And there's 3 different ways that a municipality can decide to do so. One would be to sign the Ontario Water Power Champions Charter, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on in the presentation, to proclaim Water Power Day on June 20th, which is now our annual Water Power Day in the province of Ontario, or to consider community membership, which is new in 2020, which is a very low-cost membership with the OWA so that you can be aware of all the information related to the water power industry. Before I get into a little bit more of the Water Power Champion focus topics, I would like to share with you the communities who have become Water Power Champions to date. I'm not going to name them all or read them all, but I would like to bring your attention to the fact that FONOM, so the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, has become a Water Power Champion. I know your municipality is a member of theirs, as well as many municipalities in the north of Ontario, and hopefully more as I continue my kind of virtual trip around the province. Quick little background, just so that everyone has the same information. Currently in Ontario, there are 224 water power facilities. They range in size from 1 kilowatt facilities, which you may find in someone's backyard, all the way up to 1,000 megawatt facilities, where you might find in Niagara Falls or in some of the northern communities of Ontario. In terms of our energy supply, about 1/4 of Ontario's power comes from water power, from hydroelectricity. We're very diverse in terms of our location. So as you saw from the map, we're located in southern and northern Ontario. We're very diverse in terms of our size, as mentioned. So we have facilities that are only a few years old, ranging from 0 to 25 years old, all the way to century-old facilities, which I believe we have close to 50 now. And capacity, so size, as I mentioned before, is very diverse as well. Importantly, we wanted to ensure that municipalities and communities were aware of their residents and how much they support water power in their regions. So back in 2018, we conducted a third-party survey to see what Ontario residents, or basically how they felt about water power. And we were very, very happy to find out that there was 92% support for water power in Ontario, which is very high, as well as across all regions and all political parties for support. So I know it was a topic certainly in the last election of generation, and it seems that most people support water power. It also is very cost effective, which was also a topic in the last election on cost. So when we look at hydro compared to other electricity assets, due to its long-term capabilities as well as its capacity for peak and off-peak hours, overall, it's the best bang for the buck. So if you're a resident within Ontario and you're concerned about the cost of electricity, investing in water power as well as supporting the economy through water power investment is something that you would want to consider. We also foresee a changing landscape. The new provincial government has been spoken about the movement towards local land use planning. So we're anticipating that municipalities will have more choice over their electricity within their community. It also offers opportunities in terms of our aging assets. So we have facilities that are, again, over 100 years old and are often being retrofitted, so that stimulates the economy as well. And right now there are currently 2,000 dams in the province that aren't providing electricity, but are there for alternative purposes like flood mitigation or recreation. And we see those as opportunities in the future as well to retrofit existing assets. And then finally, when communities are looking towards sustainable communities, particularly around the climate change aspect. Water power is a very low carbon, no carbon emissions once it's in place, alternative for electricity as well. So in terms of your own community in the town of Blind River, you do have 3 water power facilities located within your municipality. Each of them range from the late 1980s, in which they were built, to the early 1990s. And there are, again, you have a very small facility with the Blind River Dam, all the way up to a 2.3 megawatt facility with the Scarf Lake generating station. So in terms of your own community, we kind of view you as an existing community champion, which is why I'm very pleased to speak with you tonight. The Water Power Champions Charter, which is one of the 3 ways you can become a water power champion, is the commitment to use and expand local water power if you have the opportunity, support historical infrastructure and refurbishment opportunities, enhance man-made and natural environments, while ensuring that all the voices in your community are heard. And that means working collaboratively with members, your residents, and yourselves to create opportunities. The new community membership, some municipalities have opted in for that as well. And what's nice about that is we have weekly members updates, access to all of our members, communications, and of particular interest is the Water Power Reference Center, which is also new this year. And what the Water Power Reference Center is for any OWA members, you have access to your community, which has existing water power sites, but it also has lists of potential water power sites. So if, in the distant future, if you do decide that you would like to become a proponent of water power and invest in that within your community, you can see the potential sites that there may be, as well as a list of other information like cottage associations and parks, etc. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. And I'll just exit out of this so that everyone can hopefully see my face again. There we go.
Thank you for your presentation, Stephanie. And Council, do you have any questions for Stephanie at this time? Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Thank you for your presentation, Stephanie. I really have 2 questions, but I'll ask it as one. I'm curious to know how much the membership is in your association. And secondly, since you're a nonprofit association, are you completely funded by membership, or do you have other sources of revenue?
Certainly. The new community membership is $100 for the entire municipality. So if that involves any councillors who would like access, as well as any staff members, and that's an annual fee. We are about 50% funded through our membership fees. We also host, although this year, obviously we had to adapt, the largest hydroelectric conference in Canada, which is also part of our funding. But essentially we're a non-for-profit and we're a small staff of 4 individuals, but we do quite a lot of advocacy work at the provincial government level, as well as, in normal climates, doing things like public tours of events and different things like that.
And are there any other questions from Council for Stephanie at this time? Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Thank you, Stephanie, for the presentation. I'm just wondering, how does one go about to apply for the refurbishment opportunities?
So currently with the current provincial government, they, in the past, you would apply through the feed-in tariff program, or if you're a facility that actually needs refurbishment, it would go through the provincial government, likely through a generator itself. So if you were looking, it depends on, I guess it depends really my answer on what avenue you were looking into. So if you as a municipality wanted to build a site, you would need a procurement mechanism through the provincial government. And right now, we actually don't have that procurement mechanism. However, part of the reason why we're coming to communities is in the past, we wanted to ensure that communities were aware of future opportunities that may come up, and that instead of kind of being told where a facility would be, it's up to the community themselves to decide if they want to actually become, 50% owners of the facility itself and actually push that facility through. So in a long-winded way of saying, we need to wait for more procurement opportunities when the provincial government decides to open that up again. And we're hoping if you're in connection with us, when that time happens, we're all set up so we can move forward with a potential project.
Okay, I heard you say, I think the keywords were on a new build. So our existing dam or generating station, would that fall under this refurbishment procurement?
It would. If you wanted to add additional or more energy efficient turbines because you have older turbines in your facility, or improve upon a mechanism that might make it more efficient, then it would certainly be within that. And if you are owners of that facility, I'd be happy to connect you with the president who can move you forward with a project like that if that's something that you're interested in.
Okay, thank you. And that would be Paul Norris?
Correct. Yep.
Are there any other questions for Stephanie at this time? And seeing none from council, Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. We do have your contact information should we need to get further questions after tonight's presentation, and we really appreciate you coming forward to our Zoom meeting.
I appreciate you having me, and I look forward to the council's decision regarding Water Power Champion. And again, if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. Thanks a lot, Honorable Mayor and councilors. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.
And moving on to agenda item number 9, introduction and consideration of administration reports. We have an update from our treasurer, re-grant tracking. Are there any questions from council on this report? And seeing none, moving on to 9.2 from our treasurer again, our capital project tracking for 2020. Are there any questions from council on this report? And seeing none, and we do thank you, our treasurer, Sue Dent, for providing us with these 2 great reports. Obviously, when you have no questions, it's pretty all-inclusive, so thank you for that. From the manager of Building and Planning, re Parks Playgrounds declared as surplus. I have a motion from Councillor B. Dunbar, seconded by Councillor J. Dunbar, whereas the town of Blind River is reviewing its park, playground, and green space asset as part of the preliminary municipal lands inventory project with Tulloch Engineering, and whereas there are parks and playgrounds in need of upgrades and repairs, therefore be it resolved that council authorize the removal of the playground equipment at Shervon Playground and Talbot Park and Convent to park areas to green space. Discussion. Councillor Ponce-Ferrero, followed by Councillor J. Dunbar.
I just had a quick question because in the report, in the resolution, sorry, it's saying that that would be turned into green spaces, but in the report, it's talking about the potentiality for future residential lots. So I was just wondering if there was any clarification on that.
And I will turn that over to John Jones for his response.
Yes, as part of the decision that council is to make, there were the 3 options provided. And for the municipality to fit in with our providing of affordable housing and et cetera, and to get more residential land, this is a way for us to do that.
And Councillor Posteraro, does that answer your question?
So further to that, then with the resolution being green spaces, are we moving away from that option then and selecting the option to turn it into green space?
And Mr. Jones?
Sorry, I didn't hear that question.
The resolution is saying that we're going to convert the park areas to green space. It doesn't speak to adding additional residential zones.
And we will have our CAO intercede in the meantime.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. What Mr. Jones has done is provided council with options for this location. So it's up to council really if they want to leave it as green space or if they would like to amend the motion to incorporate one of the other recommendations from Mr. Jones, which would be to turn it into development lots for residential.
Thank
So
you.
it's a council decision on what you would like to see happen with the area.
And Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so I guess we've come to some sort of crossroads here in the town where we're closing parks, maybe due to lack of usage for those children and residents. I do see the three options that is laid out in the report for us. And I obviously like the option number 2 is just basically removing the equipment and converting back to green space with the intention that if a new council somewhere along the line decides that they want to turn it back into a park, then they would do so through a resolution to do this. I personally don't want to see lots going up along that Shervon section. But this here decision we're making here tonight, we are only making it on the Chevron
And Talbot Park.
and Talbot.
Right.
Well, there is no children's stuff in Talbot's Park right now.
No, Talbot Park to convert the park area to green space is how the
To green space.
correct.
So by doing so, turning just to green space, I can see that future councils, if they decide they want to turn around and rescind this here, what we're doing tonight, and turn it back into a park, they'd be more than able to do so. So I'm supporting option number 2.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Roy, then back to Councillor Postrero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pardon me. I'm just curious, when we turn something into a green space, is it just lawn? Or is that all we're doing? We're cutting lawn? Or are we putting in benches? Are we putting in maybe a picnic table, a garbage can, that type of thing? Or are we're just setting up our Parks and Rec for more grass to cut? Because as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I have no problem having a green space, but it should be usable somehow. You know, it shouldn't just be a vacant lot that we're just going to cut grass on forever.
And through our CAO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Councillor Roy, that is correct. That was discussion that was held at the Community Services Committee, that area would be transformed into a green space that would include sitting areas for the residents in that area to utilize as a park picnic area.
And Councillor Dunbar.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think they wanted to turn it into, Councillor Roy, into a luxury green space, actually, where you could have a venue for wedding pictures, you know, per se, come and sit down and relax. They had some really good ideas there.
And Councillor Postrero.
And was there any consideration in maybe turning one of them into a community garden with composting availability for residents?
And back to our CAO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To answer Councillor Postero's question, we don't have anyone on staff for the community garden to set it up. It is possibly something that could come up in the future through the Horticulture Society, but we would have to have commitment from another group that would carry that on. It's not something that we have the capabilities of within any of the budget discussions that we've already had in commencing that process.
And Councillor Wells, followed by Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. I lost my audio earlier during the discussion, so this may have been asked already. But if we remove the playground equipment from the park at Chevron, do we know that there are not, or we don't have any families in that area that would be wanting to utilize that playground equipment? I don't have a problem with supporting the decision to convert to green space with the understanding that we could reinstall the park equipment at a later date. But I'm just wondering if we have any idea of the potential for use for that park equipment at this time.
And through our CAO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To your question, Councillor Wells, when we looked at the park review based on the report that was submitted to the Community Services Group from the Protective Services Director, it was noted that that area has a few hazards that are laid out under the Provincial Act with regard to specifically the water, having children play so closely to the water. And a lot of the equipment is outdated and not safe to use. Therefore, you would have to purchase an entire new playground equipment. So council needs to look at the inventory that they currently have as to how they would continue to offer that service in that location. So there are parks that are fairly close to that area that could be utilized by the children in that subdivision.
Councillor Pastorero.
Sorry, just a quick question. The equipment that is still usable, will be dispersed to the other parks then that are currently in commission?
Through our CAO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, to your question, Councillor Pastorero, we would take any usable equipment to other locations. However, I don't know that there is very much from that location that we could use.
And Councillor Wells.
Well, just for clarification, so if we remove that park, the closest park for children in that area to access would be across the highway at Togo Street?
That is correct. That is the newer park within our parks that we have with playground. That one and the one in Forest Glen are the two major parks that we have.
And Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Yeah, I guess, I was looking too on the potential. I don't know how many children are living in that subdivision, at the moment. I know we also have the West Street apartments and family and children in there who come and go. But I guess, to an earlier question from Councillor Wells was, did we have any numbers on it being utilized? And I guess it didn't matter on the numbers. The problem here is that the equipment is dysfunctional, and we need to purchase new equipment to continue the park, if we were inclined to do so. Is that correct?
Yes, Councillor Dunbar, you are correct. However, we also have to take into consideration the location. So the regulations for the playground equipment, that location does not suit well based on the fact that it is right by the river. We would have to erect some sort of barrier there.
And are there any more questions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, sorry.
Madam Mayor, may I ask for a recorded vote?
Councillor Wells has also raised his hand. Councillor Wells?
Councillor Dunbar made the same comment. I was going to ask for a recorded vote as well.
All right. Thank you for that. And I will ask our CAO clerk to give us a recorded vote on this motion.
Council like me to reread the motion?
I will. Whereas the town of Blind River is reviewing its park, playground, and green space assets as part of the preliminary municipal lands inventory project with Tulloch Engineering. And whereas there are parks and playgrounds in need of upgrades and repairs, therefore be it resolved that council authorize the removal of playground equipment at Shervon Playground and Talbot Park and convert to park areas to green space.
Deputy Mayor Summers,
In favor.
Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar,
In favor.
Councillor Jay Dunbar,
Oh, I'm in favor. I'll go along with this for the moment.
Councillor Wells,
I'm opposed.
Councillor Roy,
I'm in favor.
Councillor Pastorero,
In favor.
Mayor Hagman.
In favor.
That is carried.
Thanks, everyone. And moving on from the Director of Protective Services, read the speed signs. Do we have any questions for Mr. Raymond Reed speed signs? And seeing none, it was a very good report. Thank you so much for that, and very interesting to follow the data as we progress through our months and seeing how many people actually pass through our community. Very interesting. On the presentation of committee reports, we have from the Director of Public Services, the Causley Street crossing. I have a motion from Councillor Roy, seconded by Councillor Jay Dunbar. Be it resolved that council support the replacement of the sewer line crossing under Causley Street and that administration determine costs for the 2021 capital budget as recommended from the Infrastructure Services Committee. Discussion. Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Well, will this project also incorporate sections of Haynes or Hawkins Avenue and the Haynes Avenue?
And that question is being directed to our Director of Public Services, Mr. Bender.
Yes, good evening through you, Madam Mayor. This the project pretty much starts at by the Legion. I believe that's Fullerton Avenue right up to pretty much to Young Fox on Haynes. It's close to about 78 meters, I believe, total run there.
And Mark, when and if we do go along with this, I mean, that is a main crossing. Is this going to be impeded or closed during this year initial work? And people will be filtered around the town, let's say maybe at the West Street?
Councilor Dunbar, that's a very real possibility. We have had some geotechnical work done at the site. In conversation with Tulloch Engineering last week, our drill results were not favorable. We're hoping to bore a new crossing under the highway, under the railway bed, but they have ran into bedrock. The drill samples indicate bedrock in front of the dentist office. So it may be that we need to do an open excavation. At that time when that's determined, obviously we probably put that one out to tender. And I think it probably, my opinion is that the highway we could either reroute or do impact one lane at a time, similar to what we did on the Causley Bridge.
Yeah. I was just thinking for emergency services and the schools. So obviously there are other alternative routes there. So, okay, thanks, Mark.
And are there any other questions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And from the Director of Facilities and Community Services, read the expansion of the CIP catchment area. I have a motion from Councillor Summers, seconded by Councillor B. Dunbar. Be it resolved that council pre-approve $30,000 for the 2021 budget in order to allow Blind River business community appropriate time to project plan and budget improvements for 2021, and that 2021's Community Improvement Plan Phase 2 include both downtown as well as the Causley Street corridor, and that $20,000 be pre-approved for 2022 budget in order to allow all merchants within the town of Blind River to access funding, and that all information be posted on the Community Improvement Plan outline in order to prove Blind River's commitment to investment readiness as recommended by the Community Improvement Plan Committee. Discussion. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagan. Just a comment. I'm just pleased to see that we're looking at expanding the improvement plan to include the Causley corridor. We've already seen statistics that show us the number of cars that use that particular route.
Thank you for that. And I do know that that was always the intention, to focus on the downtown core initially, but then to expand it to include the whole of our business area. Are there any other comments on this motion? Seeing none. All in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And from the Director of Facilities, from the Treasurer, read the CIP program requirements property taxes. I have a motion from Councillor B. Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Summers. Whereas the Community Improvement Plan indicates the following requirement: property taxes must be in good standing at the time program application and throughout the entire length of the grant or loan commitment. This is a standard requirement found in the Community Improvement Plan. And whereas all businesses should be permitted to access to the program regardless of the status of the property taxes, therefore be it resolved that Council authorize an amendment to the Community Improvement Plan as follows. Where a property owner is applying for funding, that the value of the grant reimbursement be applied against the outstanding property taxes, and requiring the property owner to enter into a payment agreement with the town that will result in the payment of property tax arrears within a 2-year period. Such an agreement should also address the payment of any subsequent property tax issued during this period. Discussion. Councillor J. Dunbar, then Councillor Posterero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I don't know if I heard it right, but I mean, what I'm reading is that if someone is applying for the CIP program, a small or a percentage or the total amount of the funding that they're asking for, they can take that money and put it against their tax arrears?
And I will
Is
ask that, and I will
That's my question.
Yes, I understand your question, and I will ask our treasurer to respond on behalf of administration.
Certainly, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so similar to what we do with vacancy rebates, if a business applies for a vacancy rebate and they are in arrears, that vacancy rebate gets applied directly to their tax arrears before we issue them any funds. It'd be the same thing for the CIP. If they owe money on their taxes and they are eligible for CIP, that money would just be applied to their tax account.
Okay, thank you.
And are there any other questions on this motion? Councillor Posterero.
Sorry, it might even be the same question. I'm just kind of like Jim, I'm just seeking clarification. So, so are we amending this so if they are in arrears, they can still apply, whereas currently they cannot apply if they're in tax arrears? And sorry, and why would we want to do that? Would it not be kind of an incentive for them to stay current on their taxes in order to apply for funding?
Through Madam Mayor, that is a possibility. You could leave it the way it is and they would have to be current in order to be able to apply. But what we want to do is to encourage all the businesses and all the building owners to bring their buildings up to the new standard through the CIP. So this is a way of allowing them to do that regardless of the status of their tax account.
And follow up, Councillor Castrero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So follow up to that then. So if they are in arrears, and like Councillor Dunbar was asking if they could divert some of those funds to their arrears, like it seems like the mandate of the SIP is to improve the downtown core, not pay off taxes. So what currently do they not have to show the receipts and the work done for the improvements? And why would paying off taxes be one of those kind of applicable costs that we would fund?
We're not really funding paying off the taxes. We're just diverting the funds that they would get through the CIP to their tax account. Similar to the vacancy rebates, we don't issue refunds if businesses apply for vacancy rebates and they are in arrears. They don't get that money directly. It goes to their tax account first. It's a similar situation with this, what we want to do with the CIP.
Councillor Wells.
So I suppose theoretically, if a business in tax arrears applies for CIP money and they direct the money toward the tax arrears, they wouldn't have any money left over for business improvement. Is that correct?
They would still have to pay for their share of the CIP project. So similar to anybody else, it would just be 50% of the costs is what they're eligible for through the CIP. It's an option we're providing to council. One of the other options was to leave it exactly as is, and then if the businesses are in tax arrears, they can apply for the CIP. But the point we were trying to get to is to encourage all of the businesses, regardless of their situation, to be able to do these upgrades to their buildings.
Thank you, Ms. Dent. And are there any other questions from council? Councillor Summers.
Just more comment. So I believe, if I'm thinking about it correctly, so they apply for the CIP, even though their taxes are in arrears, it's kind of like found money for them anyways, because they get to fix their place up, and even though the money is not coming to them directly, it's actually going against their tax arrears. So I mean, the money is still in their hand. It's kind of just in one hand out the other. But in the meantime, they will still be fixing up their building. Is that not how it's meant to work?
And through our CAO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, just to clarify and add to what Ms. Dent has brought forward. So what we're looking at doing with the CIP is to enhance and beautify our community, which was the #1 goal for the strat plan. We know that we have businesses in town that are struggling, and especially now with COVID. So we know that those things are happening. This is a way to assist them, to get them involved with the municipality, get them and working with them on their tax arrears, while also enhancing and helping them build upon their business or build upon their building so that they can attract new businesses to the downtown core, all while working with the municipality to pay off their tax arrears. So it really is a win-win, and it's a way for council to assist those business owners and building owners. And it was brought forward loud and clear in the strat plan that this is something that the community as a whole is looking for. So by enhancing our downtown, it's just snowballing the effects into beautifying the entire community and bringing business to the entire community. That was the intent of this.
And thank you for that. And Councillor Castrero, followed by Councillor J. Dunbar.
I know that we all want the beautification of downtown, but just wondering, so if the money is, like you say, shifted over to pay their arrears so that they can fund their beautification, what is the repercussions if they don't partake in beautification and the funds are just used to pay their taxes?
And in response to that question, our CAO?
They have to first do the beautification, bring the receipts to the municipality, and then there's a refund given at that time.
Thank you. And further questions, Councillor Dunbar?
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask Katie. So how has that been going, Katie? Has there been good response and a lot of buy-in by the businesses? Basically, I guess a lot of us councillors would like to know, do we have a good amount of buy-in? And we also probably would know if we have, I don't know how many of these people are in arrears, but I mean, do we have a level here, like to the good or towards the bad here?
For you, Madam Mayor, I can say that Ms. Bittner has been working very diligently to go door to door to the business owners and to the building owners to deliver the packages. We are working with anyone who comes in to purchase a business license to ensure that they understand the program and how it works. We're rolling it out, and there's a lot of excitement on the main street from the business owners. And we are, I believe, and I did miss the last meeting, so I'll apologize, but I believe we do have 11 applications in at this time that we have been working through. Some of them are small, but we're working with the building owners to hopefully see this take off into bigger projects in 2021. This year, one of our stumbling blocks was the, due to COVID, was finding contractors to undertake the work that these business owners and building owners wanted to do. So that was one of the hurdles this year, but there was still a number of projects that did happen.
All right, thank you.
And are there any more questions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And for our Corporate Services Committee meeting on October 26th, we have a motion from our CAO clerk, read the Public Code of Conduct. I will read the motion. Moved by Councillor Summers, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved that discussion adopt the Public Code of Conduct policy as recommended by the Corporate Services Committee. Discussion? Councillor Postrero?
Sorry, I just had a quick question. On Appendix B, it's talking about de-escalation techniques, and I was just wanting to make sure that we're never going to force get a staff member to deal with someone that might be infringing upon their human rights, or just basically being a proponent of racism, and then because it's saying that they have to show empathy and acknowledge and agree and apologize to the person to de-escalate them. I just want to see, like, is it not our employees' right to say, I'm sorry, but you are violating my human rights, and be able to walk away from that situation? I wouldn't want to put any of our employees in a position where they had to empathize with their attacker. So I'm just hoping for clarification on Appendix B.
I'll turn it over to our CAO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, and for these situations, we do train our staff, and we will be going through this training for this specific policy, where we will have, as we do with others, it would be myself or another director that would take over in this case. We would not ask any of our staff members to put themselves in this situation. In most of these situations, it would be myself that is dealing with that, or involvement of the police.
And are there any other questions? Councillor J. Dunbar?
Do we have a similar one of these policies for council?
In your big fat book. Take a look in the binder there, Councillor Dunbar. It's there.
There is a harassment policy that you may be thinking of that is similar to this. And it is, yes, it is in your councillor binder.
Big one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on this motion? All in favor? And opposed? I have to watch Councillor Summers because she has a delay on her phone, so hence the delay in me asking the second question, and that is carried. Thank you. And from our CAO clerk, we have a report on the hiring policy on that's 11.3.2 on your agenda, and I have a motion from Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Summers. Be it resolved that council authorize the reinstatement of the nepotism clause into the revised hiring policy as recommended by the Corporate Services Committee. Discussion. Councillor Dunbar, and then both Councillor Dunbars. Let's go with Councillor B. Dunbar first.
Yep.
And then Councillor J. Dunbar.
Hey, I would just like to state for the record that the concern I raised over the perception of nepotism on past hires was not a personal concern. And I'm deeply offended that my suggestion that we have a policy that addresses nepotism was taken as a that it was on past hiring policies. I'm looking forward to a hiring process that includes addressing nepotism so that we have policy to fall back on should it be questioned in the future. It wasn't a reflection of past hiring process. It was putting in place a policy that protects council and administration moving forward. And what we have suggested this evening is a definition of nepotism. I think we need to go further than that. I think we actually need policy that addresses how we handle nepotism in the work when we're hiring. Thank you for the documents that we received this afternoon. There was a very clear path of how we handle our hiring policy, what it was before. I just want to see this included in the new hiring policy.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Dunbar. Councillor J.
Thank-
Dunbar.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know, maybe I'll make it a little simpler. I'm glad to see that that this here paragraph is going to be implemented back into the policy. Though I'd like to take it a little further and maybe ask the corporate services to look at this. I mean, I see it here where hiring of relatives. We talk about hiring of relatives, and we have a definition of relatives. Taking this here and implementing this right back into the policy doesn't really cut it. I mean, I'd like to see that changed from relatives to family members. I mean, I look at it this year, you might say, well, what's the difference between a family member? Well, sure, a brother and a sister falls under the relative. But I mean, my son's wife is not a relative, but they're definitely a family member. And I don't think I'd want to be sitting on a hiring board where something could be cast back at me from a nepotism way that I'm hiring my wife's son or my wife's husband. This has to be looked at a little more in depth here. I don't like blanking it as just as family relatives with a mother-father type deal. This here would include family members, and I can't see why this can happen. And I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just saying that the hiring manager, per se, if they have a family member who's being interviewed, they should recuse themselves, because we have enough people here on staff and in administration to supervise this hiring committee where that individual can recuse themselves. And it's not set up here in the policy. You know, exactly the way that I would like to see it. And I like seeing it being implemented back into the policy, but not under this format.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar. I believe our CAO has a comment, and then Councillor Posterero.
I can wait and possibly answer Councillor Postero's question as well.
Councillor Posterero.
I was just going to state again, maybe I'm misinterpreting this, but are we not reintroducing the entire nepotism clause? So it's not just the definition, it's the existing language of the nepotism clause that goes step by step through all the checks and balances of hiring someone that you're related to. So it's not just the definition of family that we're inserting, but we're reinstating that entire nepotism clause that we got today. If that could be clarified.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's absolutely correct, Councillor Posterero. We're instating the entire thing. We use the definition from our CUPE agreement, which states for other purposes, so for benefit purposes, for bereavement purposes, what the nepotism is, what the immediate family, what the family member is. So we've used that clause. We've also ensured that any past practice that we are not sitting in, should we be deemed a relative of the person. And we have brought in the past, counselors to sit, even though counsel is not part of our hiring in a typical situation, but where there may be a deemed perception by members of council or the public, we have brought in council members to sit on those hiring policies. The other thing that needs to be stated is that if a director or myself are hiring someone who they are going to directly report to, so someone is directly going to report to me and they are not classified as a relative or immediate family member, I do need to sit in on the hiring process because I will be ultimately responsible for the hiring of that person and for the conduct of that person once they are hired. They don't report to council. I am the only one that does report to council. So this is an operational policy. And yes, we do take precautions as best we can. But just because someone is deemed to say, well, I think that there's a relationship there, I mean, where would that stop? So we do have the entire clause going back into the policy, which lays out what an immediate relative or family member is, and it's laid out very clearly.
Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Thank you for that, Katie. So, I mean, I see what you're implementing back. So that's B 1 to 5. And I know at the end of the day that you are, you sign off on the individual. So I guess it depends on the situation, who's being hiring, because I see department heads here, you know, in the policy. I see the hiring manager, and I see this all going back to the CAO, the clerk office. So I mean, you sitting in on your son's wife.
I would not do that. But I would.
That's what I'm saying. You could recuse yourself, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that is what would happen in any of the hiring policies. We have our hiring policies in place. We have HR training. We understand the process that we need to go through. We have a step-by-step process for the hiring. We have a weighted marking that we review following the interview. So we always have more than one person. There's always 3 people involved in the hiring process.
Well, that's good, Katie, and that's what I wanted to hear. And you know, with you saying that, that lets a lot of us, yourself and council, you know, off the hook from these accusations. And I'm happy with the implementation of B 1 to 5.
And are there any other questions or comments from council on this motion? And seeing none, all in favor of this motion? And opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And moving on to the Director of Protective Services with regards to the playground inspection policy. I have a motion from Councillor Summers, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved that Council adopt the playground inspection policy as recommended by the Corporate Services Committee. Discussion? All in favor of this motion? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And from the Director of Facilities and Recreational Services, the Rotary Service update. We have a motion moved by Councillor J. Dunbar, seconded by Councillor B. Dunbar. Whereas the Blind River Rotary Club Community Survey regarding the B. Yanson Memorial received 300 responses. And whereas from the responses, the community is in favor of honoring B. Yanson, therefore be it resolved that Council authorize the project proceed to the next stages of community input in order to ensure the B. Yanson Memorial Gazebo fundraising efforts and marking continue, and that the project working group liaise with the building department to host a public meeting via Zoom in order to ensure physical distancing is in effect. Discussion. Councillor J. Dunbar.
What does a next stages of community input involve?
And I will put that through to our Director of Facility and Recreational Services, Ms. Bittner.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Through you, Councillor Dunbar, what we will be doing is creating a schematic with proposed sites for the gazebo. We started off with one to gain the community appetite for such a structure. So we had to start somewhere. And what we'll be doing is transposing the engineered diagram onto Sellers Beach so people can have a really great visual of two locations. We're going to be posting that on the Rotary website as well as the town website. And then we will be hosting our public meeting via Zoom where John Jones will be joining so he can answer any questions if somebody has any questions about property bylaws or zoning or anything like that that comes up, just so we can remedy any questions on the spot.
Thank you, Ms. Bittner. Is there any appetite, have you heard, for electricity to the site?
Yes, so as the site will be accessible, of course, we would want to prep the property with electrical so it's ready to go versus drilling through a great new slab after the fact. So it's much easier for us to run conduit and prep it prior, and then we can add anything on at a later date. We would simply run the wire and we can leave it dormant, or we can activate that for very minimal additional cost.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And are there any other questions on this motion? Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagan. It's not a question, it's just a comment. I'm really pleased to see that 300 residents took the time to respond to the survey. That's a significant number, and I hope that an equal number of residents will participate during the public meeting when it's held. Do we have a date yet for that public meeting?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Wells, without the recommendation to move this program forward, we can't schedule anything. So we need council support so we can move this to the next steps.
And thank you for that. Any other comments on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Bittner. And we have no unfinished business. So under correspondence and action 13.1, we have a letter from the town of Oakville re a targeted approach to the second wave. And I have a motion from Councillor Pastorero, seconded by Councillor Roy. Be it resolved that council support the town of Oakville with the request that the province considered a targeted approach to the second wave of COVID-19 restrictions and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Premier and the Town of Oakville. Discussion? Councillor Pastorero.
I'm kind of hesitant to support this because the definition of targeted, if you're going to do like a business by business shutdown, that's not really feasible. It would be way too cumbersome. Unfortunately, if the region is a super spreader, measures need to be taken, unfortunately, to slow the spread of COVID. So with this, when they're saying a targeted approach, is it just this door that's going to be closed or this door that's going to be closed? I don't think that's a realistic approach. I do agree with a regional approach. And definitely if the numbers keep climbing the way they are, you're going to see more and more regions have to enter into a restricted phase. So I think the regional shutdown is an incentive for the entire community to be more responsible in stopping the spread of COVID. So unfortunately, I wouldn't be in favor of a targeted response.
Thank you for your comments. And other comments? Councillor Wells.
Well, thank you, Mayor Hagman. I'd just like to point out that this document was dated October the 15th, and that would be during the early stages of the second wave. And obviously cases have been going up during the last 3 weeks. We don't know what the future holds, but as Councillor Pastorero pointed out, I think a regional approach would probably make more sense than just a targeted one in certain areas.
And Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Yes, as we went through the first wave, I was an advocate for the regional way of laying this out for us. I didn't think the targeted was very fair, and I'm a believer in the regional COVID situation.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dunbar. Are there any other comments on this motion? Going forward, all in favor? And I'm marking Councillor Summers and opposed. And that is defeated. And thank you for that. And October 22nd, the Township of Southwest Oxford reassessing the aggregate resources property. We have a motion from Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Pastorero. Be it resolved that Council support the Township of Southwest Oxford with the request that the province work with the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation to address the assessment issue so that the aggregate resource properties are assessed for their industrial value, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Ministers of Finance, Municipal Affairs and Housing, Natural Resources and Forestry, and to AMO, Roma, and the Township of Southwest Oxford. Discussion. Councillor Pastorero, followed by Councillor Wells.
And again, this one, this is the one I was asking about that I would probably need to abstain, because even though I read the document, the letter to the minister, I'm not familiar with exactly what they're talking about when they're talking about MPAC. Are these like assessments, say for example, if you have a property and it has resources under it? So I think I would need more clarification, so I'd have to abstain from this, sorry.
And I would ask Mr. Jones, do you feel qualified to answer on behalf of council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, no, I have not been privy to the correspondence on this, but it sounds like more for how they're assessing the property itself versus, I guess, the potential use. I would have to do some more research into this to be able to provide you with a more accurate answer.
Thank you for that. And are there any other questions? Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. I moved the motion, and I probably should know the answer to this question, but I don't. But I understand that the desire is to have the aggregate resource properties assessed as industrial, but perhaps Mr. Jones could answer this question. How are they currently assessed? Is it a resource category?
To my knowledge, they are assessed as general rural.
And I thank you for that. Going forward, any other questions on this motion? Councillor Pastorero?
Sorry to be a pain. So maybe Mr. Jones would be able, so would this be an attempt then to increase their tax base by having them assessed as an industrial versus a rural? So would it increase the assessment value so that they could then gain more taxes?
Yes, that's what it appears to be.
And are there any other questions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? To get council to hold up their hands because I'm marking here. And opposed?
I will abstain, so I guess you said that was an opposed.
Correct. Can I see hands for opposed again, please? Sorry. I thank you for that. And that has been defeated.
Just wondering, Mayor Hagman, did you want to have a recorded vote on that? Would it be clearer?
I have it all marked down, Councillor Wells, so I was watching the hands. I think we're good.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll call for a recorded vote just so that the public can see the result of the vote too.
Sure. I have Councillor Summers as a nay, Councillor B.A. Dunbar as a nay, Councillor J. Dunbar as a nay. No?
No, I'm in favor.
Sorry.
No, just as a point of order, I think we do have to go through and do.
Sure.
recorded
Okay.
vote.
I'll let our CAO take it over. It's hard for me to catch all the names and right in the next thing. So go ahead.
Okay, I'll call the question. Deputy Mayor Summers,
I was in favor.
thank you. Councillor V.A. Dunbar,
In favor?
thank you. Councillor J. Dunbar,
In favor.
Councillor S. Wells,
In favor.
Councillor H.P. Roy,
I'm opposed.
Councillor Pastorero,
Abstain.
Mayor Hagman.
Opposed.
That's carried.
And thank you. And sorry for the confusion, Council, on that one. Moving along to the Town of Oakville, the letter to the Premier maintaining public support for public health guidelines. I have a motion from Councillor B. Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Pastorero. Be it resolved that Council support the Town of Oakville with the request that the province consider a targeted approach to the second wave of COVID-19 restrictions, and that the province make a decision based on conclusive data that targets the sources of community spread, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Premier and the Town of Oakville. Discussion. Councillor Pastorero?
It seems like this one's a bit redundant, just a different day, same kind of idea. So again, I am not in favor of a targeted approach. I'm in favor of a regional approach. So.
And are there other comments on this motion? Seeing none, does Council want a recorded vote? Seeing none, all in favor of this motion? Okay, I've got Councillor Dunbar and Councillor Summers showing a yay. And I'll opposed. And that is Councillor B. Dunbar, Councillor Wells, Councillor Roy, keep your hands up, Councillor Pastorero, and myself as a yay. So we have defeated that motion as well. Thank you, Council. And moving on to 13.4, the Town of Huron-Kinross re the Municipal Elections Act. I have a motion from Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Summers. Be it resolved that Council support the Township of Huron-Kinloss with the request that the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing review the municipal elections to place schemes in rural communities where non-residential electors are permitted to participate in elections and provide more clear guidelines to assist municipal clerks in defining the voters list and to ensure there is a clear way to report the election fraud, and that a copy of this resolution for Premier Ford and the Township of Huron-Kinloss. Discussion. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Once again, as the mover of the motion, I would like some clarification, perhaps from our clerk CAO, with regard to the definition of a non-residential elector. I know we have seasonal residents who are not always, saying, use Blind River's example, living in Blind River, but they're on the voters list and they are permitted to vote. But what is a non-residential elector?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I believe this is referring to those who have who are in campgrounds, who have cottages, that sort of thing in the area. I'm not familiar with what the motion is coming forward. I can bring more information to council at the next meeting on this, but I would say that this is more to do with issues that we've had in the past, not particularly in our community, but other communities where there's trailers, campgrounds that have seasonal residents, and then they are paying taxes in some form and wish to be on the voters list in that community.
And back to you, Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. If the clerk administrator is going to provide us with more information, perhaps we should defer this to the next meeting.
All in favor of deferring this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And again, with the Township of Huron-Kinloss re the Heritage Act, I have a motion from Councillor Roy, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved that Council support the Township of Huron-Kinloss in their efforts that Schedule 11 of Bill 108 be amended to remove the powers provided to the local planning appeal tribunal, retaining authority for hearing certain appeals by the Conservation Review Board, and to the authority for final decisions to municipal councils as the elected representative of the communities wherein the property and its features of cultural heritage value exist, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Premier Ford and the Township of Huron-Kinloss. Discussion. All in favor of this motion? I'm not seeing any hands, so opposed? Okay, and that is defeated. Thank you. Just can I have a show of hands again on the opposed so I can make sure that I'm covering you? Covered Councillor B. Dunbar, Councillor J. Dunbar, Councillor Wells, Councillor Roy, Councillor Pastorero, and Councillor Summers. Could you let me know what your vote was? I know there's a delay.
Okay, I was opposed as well.
Okay, thank you very much, and that is defeated. Thank you. Moving on to correspondence and information, October 26th, AMO gave us information on the proposed transition schedule for a Blue Box program to the new full producer responsibility regulation. Any comments on this information? Councillor J. Dunbar, then Councillor Pastorero.
I saw a date on here, Madam Mayor, and it said that the town's preferred date was 2024, but yet they put ours as 2025. Just wondering if the CAO has a reason for that, and if we are wanting to, to move along in favor of this here type of blue box transition, can we get it to 2024?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I will refer that question to the Director of Public Services, as he's been sitting in on all of this information sessions moving through the process.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. The date given corresponded, 2024 corresponded with when our contract expires with our existing provider. We had to provide a date, but the province was looking at splitting it up into 3 different time slots. So based on everybody's response, they slotted you in into the spot the year that they chose it. Actually, corresponded with other people in the transition stage as well. So I'm not sure if it was done exactly by geography or just how their theory worked, but it's split into 3 different kind of time slots.
And Councillor Pastorero, then back to you, Councillor Dunbar.
Councillor Dunbar can do a follow-up if you.
Thank you, Councillor Pastorero. Yeah, well, so Mark, 2024, if that's the end of our contract, I think the last paragraph up above it says, if the dates provided by the ministry in the draft regulation is problematic, and I would tend to think that would be problematic if we have to go into another year of contract and not be out of it on 2024. It says for the community, we encourage you to provide this information to the ministry. So are we following up with that?
And through you, Madam Mayor, the whole transition is more to do with the funding of the recycling program. It's not, I don't foresee, from what I've learned, a whole bunch of impact to the way we recycle in Blind River in the community. Most of it is the producers of the different products are now going to be responsible for paying for the recycling over Stewardship Ontario. I don't really, to be honest, see a big impact to the way we've been doing business. If anything, there may be an opportunity to increase some of the service with some of the recyclables being collected. But I think we have an opportunity to, if for some reason there is a change, it could be added into the contract. I think we'll be well aware of any impacts to the recycling program before we actually have to transition, whether it's 2024 or 25, if that helps.
Okay.
And Councillor Pastorero.
My question was answered in the follow-up, and I had a feeling that would happen, so good.
Good to know. Okay, thank you, and thank you for that, Mr. Bender. And correspondence on October 26th, we received a letter from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, re the Blind River Treatment Plant inspections for 2020. Are there any comments on this correspondence? Councillor J. Dunbar.
I was just wondering about the information they provided here. Says that we had 2 violations. We were in violations twice, though our score, wasn't affected very much. But and it gave us the reason why. Apparently something went missing, never made it to the lab, the sample. And I'm wondering if we've taken some sort of avenue to mitigate from this happening again, or is this a one-off type deal?
Through you, Madam Mayor, this is something that would be handled through the PUC. So we will address it at our managers meeting with the PUC to find out what exactly occurred. It does not seem like it was anything of major substance because we didn't lose any of the rating. What I would like to note to council is that your 10-year water fees report is up, will be up, and will be under review for the new permit to take waters. So council will need to pass a resolution with regard to that report. So there'll be, that document will be on the November 16th meeting for your review.
And thank you for that. Are there any other questions on this correspondence? Councillor Pastorero?
So just to follow up on that, so it was just the one cooler that was lost on June 2nd. So would there not be a tracking mechanism for that? Or is this just kind of like a COVID issue where it got lost in transition?
Madam Mayor, at this time, I really don't have an answer for you on that. That is something that should have been highlighted by PUC, and I have not received anything from them on that. Our managers meeting is coming up, and we will review those occurrences with them at that time, and I can report back to council following that.
And thank you for that. And on October 28th, the Huron North Community Economic Alliance had their Broadband Advisory Committee meeting, and we were provided with minutes. Are there any questions on this meeting? Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. The last bullet on the second page referred to concerns were raised with regard to components from China with regard to a privacy standpoint, which reminds me of the recent Huawei concerns.
Exactly.
Does this mean that Starlink will be using Chinese components? I was trying to make the connection there, or was that just a generic comment with regard to security?
I'll ask Councillor Dunbar to respond to your question. Councillor Wells, as he was at the meeting.
Yeah, Councillor Wells, I can't tell you complicitly if that's what he meant, but I think it was generic, and you're right about the Huawei mentioning. I think that's the way he took it. We have no idea where Elon Musk is producing his hardware for this satellite internet, but I think there will be more to come on that.
Okay.
And thank you for that. Are there any other questions on agenda item 14.3? Councillor Pastorero.
I'm so excited for all the developments in broadband. The only thing on that bullet point, now that it's been brought up, is I would be concerned with the potential for the xenophobic comments of just labeling it China as the perpetrator of security flaws when it, security breaches can come from any nation. So just I would caution xenophobic comments in the future.
Duly noted. Thank you for that. And other comments on broadband? Seeing none. And under notices of motion, I've received no notices of motion. So I would ask Councillor Pastorero to remove herself, and as we are going to be moving to Article 16.1, Introduction and Consideration of Bylaws. And I have a motion from Councillor Summers, seconded by Councillor Jay Dunbar. Be it resolved that Council authorize the Mayor and CAO Clerk to sign Bylaw 20-43, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Blind River, to deem a registered plan subdivision not to be a registered plan of subdivision, was passed in open council the 2nd day of November 2020. All in favor of this motion?
Oh, I've got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. We don't normally get questions on these. Sorry about that. Councillor Dunbar, go ahead before we call the motion.
I think this was for John. Were there any opponents to this year deeming?
The deeming process, there is not a circulation participation like there is for a severance or a zoning.
Okay.
So
Thank
to
you.
answer you, no.
Yeah, okay, thanks, John.
Thank you for that, Mr. Jones. Any other questions for Mr. Jones before I call a vote? All in favor of this motion? And opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And we will ask for Councillor Posterero to come back into the room as we move forward. I have no council reports or announcements or addendums, so I would ask that we move into the closed meeting. I have a motion from Councillor Jay Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Wills. Be it resolved that council go into the closed meeting at 8:30 in accordance with section 239 of the Municipal Act in order to address matters pertaining to personnel and litigation. All in favor of this motion? And opposed? And that is carried. I thank you, public and council. I ask you to reconnect via Zoom. Thanks, everyone. And welcome back. Council, I would like to go forward with the rest of the meeting. I have a motion from Councillor Posterero, seconded by Councillor B. Dunbar. Be it resolved that council resume the open meeting at 9:09 p.m. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And in council tonight, we discussed personnel matters as well as legal advice. And I have a motion from Councillor Roy, seconded by Councillor Dunbar. Be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and CAO clerk to sign bylaw 20-44, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Blind River, to adopt the minutes of the meeting of November 2nd, 2020 was passed in open council the second day of November 2020. All in favor of this motion? Opposed? And that is carried. And I have a motion from Councillor Summers, seconded by Councillor Roy. Be it resolved that council adjourn at 9:10 p.m. All in favor of this motion? And opposed? And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll see you soon.